Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome.
Hello, hello.
A city, like a person, has a personality. Yes, this personality is shaped by the people who live in the city, but the influence is circular, and the city also shapes the people who live within it. In this way, the circularity of influence doesn't just exist in the present, it also stretches into the past and reaches into the future. We are gathered here today in a city where these circling repetitions of influence are not hidden under layers of time, but are instead raised for easier readability. A few years ago, I finally read James's The Bostonians, and I was shocked to find that I actually recognized people I knew in its pages. I ask you, what other city can you read a Victorian novel about and recognize its interactions and culture so clearly? Made me think that I wanted to propose a slogan to the tourism board here. Boston, the more things change, the more they stay the same. The more things change, the more they stay the same could also be a slogan for poetry. A long time ago, I had a job translating academic textbooks, and I translated an essay by a Chinese economist who articulated the difference between a historical humanistic truth and a scientific truth. And this difference is that the humanistic truth is always applicable. It does not age. But the scientific one is on a line of cumulative knowledge. It does age. Its role in propulsion is acknowledged, but its application has passed. Boston is a humanist city. Linda Norton and Fanny Howe are two poets of Boston. This is not to say that their work is limited to this place, only that this is the soil from which their poetry grows. Their work, in different ways, shows us the present, the ever-presentness of the past, the inevitable repetitions of the future. It is my honor to introduce these two sages tonight. First, Fanny, and then Linda. The beloved Fanny Howe is the author of more than 30 works of poetry and prose, including Love and I, The Needle's Eye, Come and See, and The Winter Sun. Her most recent poetry collection, Second Childhood, is a finalist for the National Book Award, and her fiction has been honored as a finalist for the Man Booker International Prize. She is currently hard at work on a remix of her best/favorite poems, due out with Grey Wolf in 2026. And tonight she's going to do a sound piece with her collaborator, Sue Sharp. Linda Norton is the author of The Public Gardens, Poems and History, a finalist for the Los Angeles Times Book Prize, Wite Out, Love and Work, and Cloud of Witness, Essays, Poems, Collages. She was the 2023 recipient of an award from Nomadic Press and the San Francisco Foundation for an excerpt from Something Close, a transatlantic genealogy of love, shame, and defiance, a nonfiction work in progress that will be the final volume in the trilogy that started with The Public Gardens and Wite Out. Her collages have been exhibited at the Dock Art Center in Ireland with the support from the US Embassy in Dublin. From 2020 to 2023, she taught writing and literature at the Yeats Academy, ATU Sligo. Irish writer Dermot Healy chose an excerpt from her book Wite Out for an inclusion in an Irish anthology in 2014. Norton is also a collage artist, and her work appears on the covers of her own books and in magazines and on the covers of books by Claudia Rankine, Julia Carr, Maureen Owen, and other writers. Please join me in welcoming them. Actually, Fanny's going to go first.
Thank you. The one thing missing from this bookstone is a
picture of me.
Fix that.
I know,
We'll take one.
everybody else has a photograph. So it's great to see all these faces who I recognize. I'm going to do a very peculiar little kind of reading, except it's just a sound piece that I made with my friend Sue Shard, who's a great DJ and a musical brilliant person who helped me put these pieces together. We've done a couple of others, but I'm just going to tonight.
Fanny, would you please speak into the mic?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
Now let me see if I can see that far. And
Like that? I don't know. Like that? Just put it down.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank
you. Perfect. Is that good?
I hope so. Is that all right? Yeah. Because then you've connected it to the machine. Anyway, the thing that this came out of is a sense of endings that we're all living with in the world now without being able to resist them. And some of them you actually lean out to save, but you never wanted to before. They may have been sort of interruptive to your travels through the world, and now they seem precious in some way. And so this one has echoes of the church, the Catholic Church, which is so easy to get rid of and then so horrifying to see it go. So it's very much an echo kind of piece. And it seems like this is happily the right place to listen to it. So I'll have Sue get it going for me. Thoughts are little gods that fall like puffs of wind from the night sky. Not even quite language. We pull at it. I prefer it to all other activities. Thought studies what doesn't exist, and it's quiet about what does. The brain at work, seeping out the effects of life of the body and shaking it into an order recognizable by its likeness to the other thoughts, surely related to the composition of music. It has to have a rhythm for the brain to stay focused on reproducing that beat from the blood and breath coursing from ear to ear. Mine is a beauty-filled vision of reality, where there is a quiet that creates a resting place between the one who sees and the one who is seen. The space, called the spirit, is self-contained and keeps braiding itself into lines, dimensions, circles that cross each other and meet and move on. while its wind or word whirls within it and produces thought, and thought produces speech. All of it contributes to the speed of evolution. So every word comes into existence as a sound, then slides back into non-existence. People get depressed by all this coming and going. They grow ill, weak, they die, but the allure survives. The structure failed to cohere at the end of the struggle. Set the bedposts evenly and let the curtains down. There is still life in here.
Hi.
I'm Linda, and you would like to hear more of Fanny. And so I'm going to give you more of Fanny, but it's Linda's Fanny. We are here because this is out, my third book, Cloud of Witnesses, and Fanny is so much in this book and in all my books. So is Eileen Myles, that I felt there should be a Boston thing. I can try. Can you hear better, James? It's really sad if my voice can't even project in this tiny space. So Fanny will be a little mad at me, but I'm going to read a poem for Fanny. It's called My Mystic. And I'm kind of dedicating my reading tonight to Fanny because it's her birthday next week, and to Bill Corbett, our friend and my first publisher, and it would have been his birthday. It will be his birthday. This poem is called My Mystic. It's for FQH. My mystic is not old enough to be my mother. She yells no when she laughs at my jokes. She can't keep anything down and doesn't drink except for whiskey, wine, and water. My mystic is her father's daughter. My mystic has her own monk, a hermit who had his own monk. Out on a boat on the Atlantic with a friend, tossed around, my mystic screams with laughter when they don't drown. My mystic has an early edition of Proust in a closet with her sheets and towels. Any house sitter could steal it, but no one does. My mystic picks at her croissant in the dark, swan's way in her lap. My mystic wants to know all about my men, so I tell her, and she groans, and then we talk about the new pope. She thinks he has a humble face. From her apartment, we can see an orange neon sign across the Cambridge green. At dusk, it tints the dirty snow. My mystic used to run in and out of that hotel lobby with her best friend, stealing candy. New children crawl all over my mystic. Now children crawl all over my mystic. In the pockets of her vest, the color of their red toboggan, they find hard candy. My mystic is a sister, is lilacs, is toast. My mystic has already bought her plot. My mystic is both the crone and the infant in the fairy tale. My mystic is a fairy. She flies everywhere but leaves no carbon footprint. My mystic has a device. Children text my mystic from LA, Dubai, Oxford, Paris. My mystic might have been named Affliction or Delight if born at sea in 1620, or 2 centuries later out of Cove and Mad in Steerage, perhaps Teresa. My mystic has lips the color of a rose named for the Cathars, who had but one sacrament, consolation. Don't hate me for loving you. So in the third book, I do the same things I do in the other books, but in the third book, I interrogate the aging process, my own, and loneliness and American history, and I pay tribute to people important in my earlier books, Fanny and Bill. And in this one, I finally get to write about Charles Reznikoff. And my son and daughter are also important in the third book. And this one is a comment about place, Brooklyn, Manhattan, California, and Ireland, and about Black history and whiteness. In my first 2 books, I made centos, centi in Italian in plural, out of knitting manuals, stage directions in Lorraine Hansberry's plays, Emerson's essays, and Yelp reviews of California prisons and jails. And in this book, Old St. Paul's Cloud, as Baldwin calls it, and the Zoom cloud of the pandemic, I include essays about social solitude and about Reznikoff, along with the 30 centos I wrote using a very constrained procedure I'll describe. This poem I'm reading for Fanny because when I read here at Harvard, when Bill was alive, Fanny asked me to read this one. And I'm staying at the Eliot House. I grew up in Dorchester in St. Mark's Parish, and now I'm staying at the Eliot House. And Grace Schulman is up there, and she asked for this one too. So this is for Grace and Fanny. Patterns for Errands, and the epigraph is from Wittgenstein, Remarks on Color. We could paint semi-darkness in semi-darkness, and the right lighting of a picture could be semi-darkness. These islands lie off the west coast of Ireland as if nothing matters. The people have lived here for centuries with only a thin covering of soil over the surface. Great use is made of the seaweed, the cattle swimming out. The women here are justly famous. They weave their own tweed and make a belt called kris. The heavy Atlantic seas, the slip stitch, the difficulty of the patterns are never written down. Most impressive and rich, the trellis pattern and the rope, the tribute to the hardworking bee. But sometimes their knitting shows mistakes with a true Irish touch of nothing really matters, a careless nonchalance of the crossing of their cables. And note mistakes in the simple patterns, forked lightning or cliff paths, small fields fenced with stone, the ups and downs of married life, the mosses. The open work has a religious significance or none. Sometimes the clarity of the pattern is lost through the use of very fine wool. Green from the mosses, brown from the seaweed, gray and cream color from the stones and pebbles. Many are distinctly overbobbled. No matter, they are too lovely to be lost. Woolen knitting leaflets can be obtained. In no case is the whole pattern given. There are certain gaps and yawns, and part of the pattern is left out, as if it doesn't matter, or was too lovely, so was lost. Some of the simple patterns are charming for children's jerseys. This one, for example, would be lovely on a child. And since I'm in Boston, I'll read a little prose section from 1992 in the first book. Reading Robert Lowell's memoir of his Boston Brahmin childhood, 91 Revere Street, his mother's comment on their Beacon Hill address, "We are barely perched on the outer rim of the hub of decency." Those fine distinctions. And the ranking of the Italians in Boston then, grade A and grade B WAPs. Grade B applying to Sicilians, my mother and her parents. There were no grade C Italians. You'd be Black if you were a grade C Italian. We ourselves rank the Irish, lace curtain, and shanty. My shanty Irish father looked down on my grade B WAP mother. I think my husband is exotic because he is a WASP with educated, affluent parents and purportedly Mayflower ancestors, while I am not. His father roomed with Kevin Wite at Williams College, Kevin Wite, the mayor. Now I think of Ed Barrett. I had never even heard of Williams College when I met my husband and his father, a gulf between us, our worlds, but to others, we were just two white people. Once standing in Riverside Park in 1984, when I dared to worry out loud, my brother Joseph told me he wouldn't get AIDS because he only associated with Ivy League people, not those low-life, no-account sorts. 2 years later, he was dead at 24. The narcissism of minor differences, Freud's phrase. Now I want to read a poem about California, where I live, where I have lived for a long time. It's called California, Lyric and Burden for Freight Train, Harmonica, and Peacock. The mind catapults a poem into the future. Girls pulse with the urge to deliver. Yarrow and oleander line the roads of the state. The crushed contraltos move back east. Here's a creamy transparency, a filmy death. The boxcars make a nice apocalyptic sound. What does it mean when peacocks scream? Who told you that you were naked? Upholstery cracks in the noonday sun. Too soon, new lipstick tastes of attic. A louvered cattle car rumbles to slaughter. A box of meat, a box of metaphysics. This day, like others, is entirely fugacious. Men die making gasoline for yachts and trucks. Blood and starch go together on a plate. The freight train slices the fat pink distance. And I think of this as a Boston, Oakland poem. Dream after reading Pasternak. Last night I dreamed that Wanda called me about community college, but her name was Laura. Laura's favorite color was mauve of lilac and bud. She liked to sit in the violet dusk at the shop near the black currant caramels in glass jars. Wanda goes to junior college near the birthplace of the Black Panthers on the other side of the lake. I can almost see it from my window, looking toward the port of Oakland. In my dream, when my mother saw Wanda, she said what she always used to say. That's the reason I ran away. Then my mother died and Wanda was transbluent, neither Union nor Confederate, neither Black nor Greek. At the wake, I wore mauve toenail polish, a shade called Call Your Mother. Next year in Jerusalem, whispered Tip O'Neill. He was davening on the steps to the polls, counting precincts. Catholics don't daven, and this is not the kind of thing he'd say, but I heard it anyway. When we were little, we lived near the house where Malcolm X had lived. He stayed there with his sister when he first came to Boston. I didn't know this when I was a girl. On my desk in Oakland, I have a picture of his old house, a woman standing on the front porch, staring suspiciously at the camera. In the refugee camps in Jordan, where it was crowded and dry, Jean Genet would look up at the sky. Clouds are nutritious. In Palestine, he thought of Oakland and the Panthers, souls shipwrecked by the church, prisons and pietas. Prisons he found rather motherly. Mourning for Laura, Zhivago also mourned that distant summer when the revolution had come down to earth from heaven. Grieving, he looked at bruise-colored clouds and thought of politics. All politics is local, said Tip O'Neill, except for mystics. This is for Bill Corbett, Begin in Blue, and it starts with a quote from Timothy Hyman's book, Sienese Painting. The blue of her robe reads above all as a flat, silhouetted shape. A deep, infinite midnight blue, large enough to lose ourselves in. This very dark blue creates unparalleled effects, almost of hypnotic trance. It is as though we are being invited to worship, not so much the Madonna as the blue. I'm reading John Wiener's chapbook, Pressed Wafer, at one of the giant tables upstairs in the archives where I work when a visiting scholar, who was the poet Laura Mullen, asked for help with research. And that's how I learned that in 1882, landscape architects at the University of California designed a eucalyptus grove for the campus, a grove through which I walk once a week. Tasmanian blue gum trees were planted as a windbreak for the cinder running track. They grew and grew, non-natives making themselves at home. To one who'd never seen a eucalyptus tree, the grove smelled like cough drops. Wieners was a Boston boy. Later in San Francisco, he wore blue eyeshadow and sold heroin packed in matchboxes the size of a palette of eyeshadow. False eyelashes glued one above the other on his forehead, cockeyed Caucasian. Eyelids the color and shape of the leaves of the blue eucalyptus near the track, where the beautiful athlete, also a Joseph, also a John, breathing hard after a sprint, does not look up at the plane from Boston, passing over the track. Boys in California know nothing of priests in long skirts shoveling snow, winters invented by Emily Dickinson. The blacks and the blues, the grove as artifice. In Berkeley, Bob Creeley recorded a version of a poem for painters. With want of it, despair is on my face, showered by the scent of the finish line. The golden boys, protected by tall trees, blue blood, blue eucalyptus, blue lined paper. Beginning with violet, I begin in blue. My middle name is Joseph. Sanskrit Vaka, Wat, temple, grove, copse, thicket. A coppice, spinny break for the broken. A grove, a stand of trees with little or no undergrowth. So here's the floor, all clear and still. A thicket, cold hell, grave, love, leaves. Torn tickets in the eucalyptus, leaves, pants in the trees. Who walks through the grove in winter rain? Pants decomposing in the decomposing leaves, pants and a dog. This was after the picturesque era, before free speech. Books in the running brooks, books in the trees. Strawberry Creek roars with the snow melt coming down from Truckee. The train back to Boston leaves at 3. Across the enormous country, passing a car filled with beets, ascending, going where beets don't go, climbing into the mountains. He leans out the window, his ears pasted back like a dog's. Like a dog, submissively free. Submission is different when there's no force. In the Rockies, they close the windows now because so many travelers have been decapitated, leaning out to see the trees. But the windows were open then, so he looked. And then I think I'll read one more from the new book for Fanny. So I made these centos from stacks on which I would perch my computer for Zoom meetings. And I would grab just a bunch of books. And all my stacks seemed to include a book by Fanny because they weren't organized at the time. And so there are lines from Fanny's books in almost every one of the 30 poems in the book. Let me see if I can find something good. So if you look at the book, you'll see there's a poem, and then on the other side, there's a little square with all the attributions. And the squares themselves are kinds of poem. And here's one, the last one I'll read for Finn. They're all dated 7/12/2020, and they all have names. Votine, Votine is a religious devotee in Irish. And the epigraph is from Fanny, it's short. By combining chance with deliberate choice, I wanted to suffer on the page. For you shall not be certain about anything forever and ever. I have who has not. It is a sentence one falls into. Hard to shed the notion of redemption, perhaps especially hard for Catholics. Sometimes the job gets you, and sometimes you get the job. Within a predictable future, we expect the famous knowledge to be abandoned in the name of free enterprise. The drummer will drool about liberation, but the oppression in the country will be unparalleled. I think that's enough. Thank you.
So happy birthday, Fanny.
Thank you, Chloe, for those wonderful introductions. Thank you for the wonderful recording, and thank you for the wonderful reading tonight. Let's give them all a round of applause. And thank you all for attending. We have some books for sale. Courts will be signing books. If you could all please put your chairs up against one of the walls, I'll be very grateful. Thank you again.
Thank you, James. Thank you so much.